insert to your worship bulletin so you can see our two passages of Scripture for today. First, we'll be reading a passage from Numbers chapter 14, a brief part of a much larger story, and then we will be looking at Matthew chapter 14, a more familiar story. So first, Numbers 14, verses 36 through 38. And the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregations complain against him by bringing a bad report about the land. The men who brought an unfavorable report about the land died by a plague before the Lord. But Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, alone remained alive, of those men who went out to spy the land. Matthew 14, verses 22 through 33. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately, Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you in the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Will you pray with me? Almighty God, as we continue in this time seeking out a more full understanding of you, I just ask that you might open our minds to the understanding of this scripture, that you might continue to help us in this faith journey. And out of that you might allow the words that I speak to be consistent with your will for us. And if there is anyone here who needs to hear a different message, I ask that you might speak directly to their heart, mind, and soul, that they may be aware of the love, care, peace, and comfort that you offer unto this morning. For it is in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. You all have heard me say before that I'm that cool guy at the Y working out who is listening to sermons when I'm working out. And yesterday I had the chance, when I was getting in my cardio, to listen to Ladies Sunday for last week and hear what a wonderful job people in the congregation did in the service, and to hear what a fabulous job Julie did with her sermon. And that was truly a fabulous Sunday, wasn't it? Amen. And it was a real honor for me to be able to sit there trying to work out and listen. And you were my motivation yesterday when I was working out to keep going. And when you all were here gathered, at least in first service, I was driving my way across Missouri after spending the weekend working with the funeral for the president from Culverstock when I was there. And I told my mother that I would be back in church that next morning with her. And so I came to church. I told her, "Don't expect me early. I'm going to be right on time." And so I got there just on she immediately told me, your plans for this afternoon have changed. I have some things that have come up, and it's family. I said, but Mom, I already have plans. And then she gave me the mother look. You all know the mother look? And so guess what happened after? I changed some plans. But in the midst of that travel, being back there in Missouri, I spent some time back driving around the campus of my former college, and I drove that morning on the way to church by the first church that I ever worked at, where I was 18, and I had 18-year-olds in my youth group. Then I drove by my grandparents' house in Paris, Missouri, and I made 2 trips around my grandparents' house as I remembered time with my cousins and my brother as we would play in the yard. I just kind of needed to soak up some of that nostalgia, you know? What it is to really think back about those moments that are precious to us, that have helped chisel us into who we are, and to find value in that. So as we think about the Israelites and their time in the Exodus, where they don't know who they are, they are in this time where yes, God is working with them to know their identity. Still a very purposeful time. It is still a time of great questioning, a time of great doubt, even though, remember, they wanted to be in the Exodus, right? Pharaoh, oh baby, let my people go, right? It's that song from the 90s, if you ever heard it with all the little actions and stuff. And so they have this opportunity to be in the Exodus. But when times get rough, it's easy to lose focus, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to deal with problems for a few hours or a few days, but when you deal with problems for years and years, it's easy to lose focus. It's easy to lose that sense of connection with self and, of course, connection with God. So the Israelites have been dealing with this, and they are thinking possibly it is time to get close to the entering of the Promised Land. And so Moses chooses 12 spies, one from each one of the tribes, to go out into this Promised Land and look to test the nature of the people and the nature of the land. And they find that there are numerous people there, but that the land is fruitful. And so, as you know from the excellent help I had during the children's moment today, right? You have the 10 spies that are filled with fear because of the people. And so they come back and they start, instead of looking at the harvest potential and the good fruit that they saw being born there, instead they sent the negative message. Not God's message, but their message of fear amongst the people. And the response of the Israelites is that they bought into the fear of those 10 spies, so much so that they cried out with despair at Moses and to God. And so what that amounted to was another 40 years of wandering, right? And then if you look in the scripture passage that you see there from Numbers, you see that Joshua and Caleb are the 2 spies that were faithful, and they are the ones that are allowed to enter into the Promised Land. And why do they have that confidence? We recognize that in Scripture, in particular, if you look into Numbers, chapter 13:30, Caleb is the one that says, we can do it. He has that belief that we can do it. And Numbers 14:22 says that God will provide. And as a part of that provision that goes back to Genesis 17. If you look at verses 14 through 16, we find this in the reading. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a reminder in a book and recite it in the hearing of Joshua. Why do you write something down and then repeatedly recite it? So you do not forget it, okay? So that is what is being emphasized here from the Lord to Moses. I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called it, the Lord is my Amalekites for generation upon generation. That's why Caleb has this confidence, because a large grouping of the people that he saw when they went to go spy into the promised land were these very people that God said would never have victory. And so he has confidence. They have the fruit that they see, they touch, and they can take back. But the people, Caleb has enough confidence in, because according to the scriptures, he was of different spirit. He was of different spirit. Caleb and Joshua, in the midst of that time of the Exodus, kept a connection with God that allowed them to continue to seek out and find God's vision and to place that vision above their fears, above their worries, because they were on God's track instead of the track of their own. It's not always easy to buy into God's track, even when we know the stories, right? For example, how many of y'all believe that God is faithful? How many of y'all believe that God provides? How many of y'all worry? How many of y'all complain about stuff? How many of y'all whine? How many of y'all are sick of other people whining? But do you believe God's going to provide? So I might say, then hush up. Or I might say, it's a part of the human condition. We can relate with those 10 spies, but we strive to be more than them. We strive to learn from their example. And we've been dealing 3 of the past 4 weeks with this kind of understanding of door. And we've talked about approaching it and knocking on the door. And today we're talking about actually having the bravery to go through and step through that door that God is calling us to step through. He was calling the Israelites to step through that door into the promised land, to come and to take it. And instead, because of the 10 spies who fed this negativity into the church, right, the Israelites, they spread that negativity into the nation. They said, no, God, we're afraid. We're not going to do what you want us to do. How often you and I find ourselves in that same position. It is hard to take a step of trust when you don't know the outcome. This was not as effective in first service. Maybe it'll work better in this service. How many of y'all have ever been bungee jumping? Raise your hand really, really high. Aiden? We even had one in first service. A couple. You all are pretty wimpy. I think I need to change my whole sermon. I don't know. But, okay, well, the first time I went bungee jumping, okay, it was at South Padre Island, and there were 2 platforms side by side. And one of them had a sidewalk around it. And in the midst of that sidewalk were pieces of mannequins that had been put into wet concrete. And so when you went up to it, there's legs sticking out this way and that way. And then the cushion underneath the air cushion, right, that's going to catch you in case the cord snaps, says, do you know Jesus? The other bungee jumping place that was right beside it had a lit up cross on the top of the platform and had this little heavenly message on that air mattress. Safety said, which one do you think I went on? Hell yeah, I'm going the cross all the way. And I don't know about, okay, so 2 of you all actually raised your hands and you've been bungee jumping before, right? So when you went bungee jumping and you got up on that platform, were you more scared when you were climbing up, or were you more scared when you stood up to look down? Stood up to look down, same. It's kind of like, since you all are kind of wimpy, if you all were at the swimming pool, and it's not a high dive, maybe a mid-high dive for you wimpy people, is it more scary to climb up that ladder or go out on the diving board? For some people, it's scary to climb up the ladder even, right? But I remember when I got to go do you all have any second thoughts? They're taking notes. They're looking at the phone, like, trying to keep up with me. I'll try to go slower. Did y'all have any hesitation about jumping? Okay. Well, I did. And I'm stuck in a tough position because if I back down, I have two problems. One, I have to deal with my friends who know I went out and are never going to let it down. And two, when I kind of looked back, I noticed that it was a little bit narrow, and I was going to have to try to walk back, and now I had this cord behind me, and I might trip over it or something and fall, and then I'm going to fall into a less glorious fashion. And if I just went ahead and bumped up and jumped. So I had to make the decision, so I turned to that platform, and I was scared. I wasn't really being faithful. God did not call me to that moment, I don't think. But God blessed me and watched over me in that moment. And I jumped. And I loved it. It was great. It was a great thrill. Did you guys like it when you jumped? Did you cry a little afterwards? Were you okay? Okay. All right. Because we're guys. Because we're tough. All right. So, but what it is, today we wouldn't have known that thrill and that joy if we hadn't eventually gotten the courage to jump, to overcome some of that tendency that at least I had. They didn't. But I had a tendency not to want to jump when I was up there. Sometimes it is scary to go through that door. Sometimes it is a challenge to really step up and do what God calls us to do. But then again, sometimes, like maybe these two young fellas, have a little bit of that arrogance, like Peter has in the second story, where Jesus has been up praying. They've been with the crowds. Jesus tells the disciples to go on down to the boat. He takes care of the crowd. He's up praying. Storms come. Boat drifts. Jesus sees them out there. He's just like, all right, I'll just walk out there. Jesus walks towards the boat, and the disciples freak out, thinking it's a ghost. Jesus says, relax, it's me. Apparently they don't understand that it's Jesus' voice. Okay? And Peter, in his arrogance, and his boldness, says, if you are the Lord, call me out onto the water, let me walk on water. That's not asking much, is it? And so, Jesus just says one word. Did you notice that? Jesus just says one word. Peter hops out the boat, walks on the water, no problem. Everything is good. And it's pretty amazing. Isn't that an amazing story?
Until he peters out.
Until he peters out. Right. That's a good phrase. Right? And what is it that leads to Peter's petering out? He's already seen miracles of Jesus. He's just finished walking on water. All right? But the wind blows and he gets scared. And when he does, what happens? He starts to sink in the water. And Jesus reaches out, and I think this is an amazing concept to imagine in our minds. Jesus reaches out and catches Peter, lifts him back up, and then what do they do after that? They have to get back to the boat, so I'm assuming that they walk. Isn't that amazing? What an amazing story. And what an amazing lesson to you and I about trust in God and whether we allow the visions of God to flow through us in ways that we don't limit the vision of God because of our own fears, because of the own things that we do to stifle out what God might be dreaming beyond that door. Last Saturday, a week ago, from yesterday, I was back for the funeral, as I said before, the former president of Culver Stockton from when I was there. And it's a disciple school, of course. I've gone there to church camp, but I really didn't know the full depths of some of this. His daughter and son-in-law were good friends of mine in college. I was in their wedding. I'm sure that's a big piece of why I ended up having the opportunity to go back and be in the service. But when he became president of Culver Stockton, there tradition, faith-based private college. And so President Brown was hired, brought on to be a part of the solution. And so he is trying to figure out the vision, and he is also a Christian man, was a Christian man, and so he's praying over this issue. And so he calls, this should make the trustees nervous, he calls the board, one of the board of trustees and says, will you meet with me at the bank in the morning? That's not necessarily a good thing, is it? And it wasn't envisioned as an exciting thing because they had already been told by other financial institutions that they wouldn't give them money because it was so hard to imagine a positive vision. So the next morning, President Brown goes down and he sits down with this member of the board of directors and the bank official, and he cast out this vision in front of them for an idea about how to save the school. The banker bought in, the member of the board of trustees bought in, and by the time that I was enrolled there in 1983, it was one of the top financial, grounded, private Christian institutions in the country. How did it go from less than 300 and almost dying out to such a strong financial institution? It was because President Brown dreamed a dream that seemed impossible. It was because he had the faith and the courage to cast out a hope that was risky. The bank said no. Why did banks say no? Because they don't think you're going to be able to pay it back, right? If you're a board of a trustee in a school, do you want your school to take on a loan that they can't pay back? No. But they took steps of courage. All three of them, the bank, the board of directors, President Brown, they all had to take a step of courage. And it was a part of God's bigger vision, and God blessed those actions. And it bore great fruit. Now you may say that's not that great fruit because you got me, but still the school became very stable. And it continues to produce a Christian witness. And that happened because he was able to see a bigger vision. 2 spies against 10. Peter against himself and his arrogance. What opportunities might God be calling you to step into? What blessings has God bestowed upon you where you have been equipped for something beyond the door, and maybe you've been saying no? Or maybe you've been giving God a list of reasons of why you cannot go through that door. What are you willing to challenge and put before God and say, God, if you are calling me to go through that door, I will go. I will take that step out and I will jump and I will have confidence in you because, as you all told me earlier, you believe that God will provide, that God is invested in your well-being. So when you and I jump, we do so with a pretty awesome security blanket, don't we? As those opportunities come to us, may our eyes be wide open. May our spirits be like Caleb, that we might have that sense of connection with God, that we might see that calling, and may we have the courage to act upon it, truly for God's glory's sake.